Hey everyone, I know it's been a while since I made my last video. August is a pretty busy work month for me, so the video production will be a little bit slower than usual. However, there's one topic that I've wanted to cover for a while, and that's PvP IVs. How much do they really matter, and which Pokemon should you power up versus which ones you shouldn't? The long story short is that there really is not a simple answer to this. So I'm going to dive into why this is the case, and hopefully this will help you decide which mons to invest in for PvP. This primarily affects Ultra League and Great League battles. For Master League battles, you pretty much just want max IVs because there's no cap. First and foremost, why is PvP IVs even a thing? To explain this better, you really have to understand how stats play a role in terms of the CP formula. You may have noticed that some Pokemon that have the same exact level will have higher CPs even if they're the same IVs. This is because the attack stat will boost the CP of a Pokemon much higher than the defense and stamina stats. In every scenario, if you have Pokemon that have higher attack than defense and stamina and they're all the same levels, then the Pokemon with higher attack will have higher CP. The impact of this is so great that even if your total IVs are lower, but if you have a higher attack stat, you can even have higher CP than Pokemon with higher overall IVs. How this plays a role in PvP is that there's something called max stat product. That pretty much means the total amount of stat points you can fit into Pokemon for their specific leagues. Because the attack stat jumps the Pokemon CP so high, you usually want as low of attack stat as possible. That way you can have a greater overall stat product. To use Skarmory as an example, you'll see that the top Skarmory is a rank 1 Skarmory. I'm using PvP Poke to demonstrate the overall stats of these two Skarmories. So on the first one that hits 1500 CP with 0 attack, 15 defense, and 14 stamina, you'll see that its overall stat product is 2153. If you look at the one below with 15 attacks, 0 defense, and stamina, you'll have a 1951 overall stat product. So as you can see, because the Skarmory in the bottom has higher attack, you can't fit as much overall stats. Although it has a higher attack, the trade-off is not as worth it in the overall stat product. To the left of the IV stats, you'll notice that the first Skarmory is level 27.5 versus the second Skarmory is 26.5. And that's mainly because you can't power up the Skarmory in the bottom as much because the attack stat is making the CP jump higher. So you end up having a lower level Skarmory. So if you have access to the rank bot powered by Ghost Stadium on a Discord group, or you could go to Ghost Stadium's PvP IV checker website. From there you could type in your stats, and I'll link that website down below. What this rank means is the overall stat product you can produce. So the rank 1 Skarmory, which is the one at the top, has produced the highest amount of stat product you possibly can get with a Skarmory. So if you look at the one at the bottom, it's ranked in the 4000s, which means that it is below the vast majority of Skarmories in terms of the overall stat product it has. So why all these numbers are important is because this can play a direct role in a lot of matchups you have. If you have the top Skarmory versus the bottom Skarmory in a mirror match, you'll see through PV Poke that the top Skarmory ends up beating the bottom Skarmory in 1 shield and 2 shield scenarios. In the 0 shield scenarios, they end up tying depending on which has charging priority, but for 1 shield and 2 shield, it actually does make quite a bit of difference. And the main reason is because the top Skarmory can survive much longer. So a general rule of thumb that a lot of people will go by is you want really low attack and high defense at HP to hit that max stat product in a high rank PvP Pokemon. However, it is also really important to come close to that threshold of CP as possible. If you look at this Lugia I have for Great League, you'll think that it's actually really good for PvP. The reason behind that is because it has 1 attack, 14 defense, and 9 stamina. So that's pretty good because it has high defense and high stamina and low attack. However, if you look at the CP though, it's at 1460 out of 1500. If you look up the rank of this Lugia, it's ranked 1157. And the reason behind that is because if you're closer to 1500, you're able to pack in more stat points overall. So if you look at the IV Checker website, you'll see that the rank 1 Lugia actually has a 4 attack. Even though generally having a higher attack stat isn't ideal, in this specific situation, it puts the Lugia exactly at 1500, which means that it has more overall stat points. One other thing that I want to note is that for Pokemon you can't catch in the wild, you definitely have to adjust the minimum IV tab. So the lowest possible IVs you can possibly get Lugia to is a 111 from trading with a good friend. So this is important because no Lugias can possibly have 0 as any of their stat points. This will give you a better idea what specific rank your Pokemon is. So a big question you may have is, if I have a higher ranked Pokemon in terms of PvP IVs, does that mean that it's absolutely better than a lower ranked Pokemon of that specific species? Unfortunately, that is not the case, and this is where it gets a little bit more complicated. So now I'm going to showcase a match between me and my friend Jinhee at a Rainbow Cup tournament. So I'm going in with a Kingdra that's ranked 98th and her Kingdra is ranked in the 3000s. And so by far, my Kingdra is ranked much higher as PvP IVs are concerned. But as you can see right here, I'm hitting much lower health faster than she is. And so I get to Outrage, I'm going to use it right here. And she's going to shield it, and she's going to use Outrage. Just because I CMP, I was able to get to it. And I choose not to shield in this specific scenario, but as you can see, she had much more health left than me. And had I shielded that matchup, I would have lost anyway. So Jinhee provided me with the IVs for a Kingdra so that I was able to do some comparisons. So if you look at the simulations, you'll see that my Kingdra loses in every single match situation with the exception of 0 shields, just because that's dependent on whoever can get to outrage first. This is consistent with the outcome of the match. So why did this happen? So there are these two big concepts that come into play when it comes to IVs. There's something called breakpoints, which means how much damage you are doing against an opposing Pokemon. And then there's something called bulk points, which means how much you could defend against an opposing Pokemon. Breakpoints is specifically related to the attack stat, and then bulk points is specifically related to defensive stat. The stamina stat doesn't play a role in this because that is controlling specifically just how much HP your Pokemon has. You see on PvP that you need at least a 122.89 attack to be able to do 6 damage per Dragon Breath versus 5 damage per Dragon Breath. As you can see, my Kingdra at the top only hits 122.2, so it ends up missing that attack breakpoint that allows it to hit for 6 damage. But Jinhee's Kingdra at the bottom hits 123.3, which means that it's doing 6 damage per Dragon Breath versus 5. If you look at the bulk points at the bottom, you see that I need at least 128.63 to take only 5 damage from any Kingdras, no matter what their attack stats are. And you see that my defense was only 122.8, so that's why I still took 6 damage per Dragon Breath. Even though Jinhee's Kingdra didn't hit that defensive bulk point, I didn't have a high enough break point to even do that much damage regardless. So what this means is that even though I had a higher PvP IV Pokemon than Jinhee's, in the mirror matchup I still end up losing because of break points and bulk points. However, what's important to note is that breakpoints and bulk points are actually very specific to the specific matchup you're in. So this means that not every single matchup will have relevant breakpoints and bulk points. So this means that sometimes you do want to prioritize having more stamina and a higher PvP IV ranking than having to worry about specific breakpoints from attack. I'm going to simulate some matches with Altaria to show an example of where you just want max stat product instead of having to worry about breakpoints and bulk points. So in this mirror matchup, my Altaria is ranked in 2000s versus his is ranked number 7. And in this situation, we're both just going to take sky attacks from each other. He has CMP, so he's able to hit me with a sky attack first, and I hit him with a sky attack right after. And so right after this, you'll see that both of us are not able to get to a second sky attack, and we're going to have to rely on Dragon Breath to feint each other out. And because I have lower stamina in this specific situation, he's able to feint me out before I can. And so in this second scenario, we're both just going to strictly only use Dragon Breath. And this will pretty much simulate a 2-shield situation, because if we're just shielding both sky attacks, it's not going to really do anything anyway. And right here, you'll see that my Altaria still loses to his. And the main reason behind that is because his Altaria just has more stamina than mine and is able to outlast when it comes to Dragon Breath. If we go into PvP and put in all these stats, you'll see that my Altaria at the top has a 2070 stat product versus his has a 2196. So he has an overall higher stat product than mine, and he also has higher stamina in this situation. If you look at the breakpoints and bulk points of this head-to-head, you'll see that no matter what kind of Altaria you have, you're going to do 4 damage per Dragon Breath as long as your Altaria is powered up to as close to 1500 as possible. The same thing goes for bulk points, where no matter what your defense is, as long as your Altaria is powered up to close to 1500, it's going to take only 4 Dragon Breath damage. In this last scenario, I'm going to showcase a Swampert matchup, and the reason why I want to show this is because Mudshot is not going to be a move that does quite a bit of damage, but instead it generates a lot of energy for your charge moves. So my Swampert is ranked 39th, and his Swampert is ranked 2. And unfortunately, my Swampert, I don't have a lower ranked Swampert, so I'm just going to showcase with this. And in this situation, we're both going to shield each other's Hydro Cannons, and in this situation, I have CMP. And so you'll see that I'll hit Hydro Cannon first every single time, and I'm going to get to another one, and I'm going to just hit his Swampert with a Hydro Cannon. And he's choosing not to shield here, and I'm not going to shield in this specific situation. And as you can see, that no matter how much Mudshots we're doing right now, we're going to get to a Hydro Cannon before we can feint each other out with Mudshot. And from there, pretty much no matter what situation it is, if whoever has CMP in this situation will win. And it's because Mudshot's not going to do enough damage anyway, and you're going to have to rely on a charge move in any situation you're in. You can see this on PvP, where in every shield situations, it will really come down to whoever has charge move priority. If you look at PvP, you'll see that breakpoints and bulk points will remain the same as long as your Swampert is close to 1500. I did simulate one scenario where if a Swampert had 15 attack with 0 defense and 0 stamina, it actually does lose the 2 shield situation to opposing Swampert because it's not able to survive the first Hydro Cannon that it takes. So for the most part, Swampert is a good example of a Pokemon you want to have as much stat product as possible. You don't really have to worry about hitting a certain breakpoint with attack. A big reason behind this is because Mudshot just doesn't do that much damage in general. So in conclusion, how important are PvP IVs? I would say for the most part, they do make quite a bit of difference. In the mirror matchups, this can make a huge difference if you have more stamina or if you're reaching certain breakpoints or bulk points, as you can see from the Kingdra matchup. In other scenarios, you may need a certain breakpoint or bulk point against a matchup of 2 different species. One example of this would be the Vigoroth and Wigglytuff matchup that I mentioned in a previous video. Like I said before, this is really tricky because breakpoints and bulk points really do matter a lot on the specific Pokemon you're going against. And so you can't even apply breakpoints and bulk points across the board for a specific species. What this means is that specific cups may call for specific spreads depending on what are popular matchups. If this is important to you, you can always look on PvP Poke and look at the breakpoints, but usually there's enough people that look into this that you can figure it out from Discord, YouTube, or Reddit. PvP IVs are pretty complicated. Unfortunately, there's no way we can simplify it, but hopefully this video will help you prioritize which Pokemon to power up and invest in for PvP and which ones not to. I hope this information was useful. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe for future content, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.